Hi everyone, my name's Corina and I am a homeschooling mom here to talk to you today about my experience homeschooling my three children. My oldest is my son, he's 11. Next, I have my daughter who is 8 years old, and my youngest daughter is 2.5. It's really my pleasure to be able to talk to you about this today, and I hope that some of the information I share could be useful for you, whether you're already homeschooling or considering homeschooling. About that, let me just say to all of you parents who are teaching your children now at home for the first time, this is really not a true experience of homeschooling for you. You were kind of thrust into a situation that was beyond your control, so you weren't able to make that choice to homeschool. But let me assure you that homeschooling really is a rewarding experience for both the teacher and the child. It is challenging, don't get me wrong, but it's not as challenging as what you're experiencing now. Um, on top of being cooped up in the house and unable to go anywhere, in addition to fear and anxiety and kids feeling bored, you're just not receiving the true homeschool experience. So I just want to reassure you that it's not always like this. So if you are considering homeschooling, please don't use this as a testament of what that experience would be like for you. So I've been homeschooling my kids for the past 3 school years, and I initially made the choice to homeschool my kids because although we loved the public school that they were attending and we also tried private school in the past, neither of those just were able to meet exactly what we wanted. Both of our children are exceptional learners in both directions. I just wasn't satisfied with what I was receiving from the school regarding the patience and the willingness to try alternative methods when it comes to helping both of my children. So I decided, along with my husband, that the best thing for our family would be homeschooling. It was a tough choice because I am not only a homeschooling mom, but I'm also a child therapist who specializes in play therapy with children. And I have my own practice in 2 different locations. In addition to my mental health practice, I also have online businesses. Another reason that I decided to homeschool my kids is that my schedule with work would interfere with me really having the impact on the education of my kids that I felt was important and necessary for them. I wasn't home to challenge them or to provide that extra care and attention that I know they would have benefited from. Instead, as soon as they got off of the school bus, I was rushing off to the office to see my patients. And, with me working with children, I wasn't able to go in during the day because it is a regular and consistent appointment and no one wants their child missing that much school. So I found myself getting home in the evenings around 8:30, sometimes 9 o'clock at night, and my children were already asleep. And, in addition to that mom guilt that us working moms will feel, I also struggled with knowing that I wasn't giving my children the attention that they needed regarding their academics. So now, with me having to leave to go to the office around 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon, it's not as big of a struggle for me because I know that I've spent all day with them, teaching them and giving them what they need academically. I also have reduced my work schedule. So instead of working Monday through Saturday, I am working only Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the office seeing clients. This decision that I made to not leave my career, but just to modify my career really ended up being the best decision that I could have made, not only for my children, but for my husband and for myself as well. It really has impacted my family in a positive way. What we decided to do to support our homeschooling journey was to convert my office into a classroom. So we have desks and computers and bookshelves and the dry erase board, and everything you can think of that you would need in a classroom. We have that in our classroom, and I'm thankful that we were able to do that. But even if you don't have a room that you can turn into a classroom, you can still homeschool at the kitchen table, because the majority of the time that's where my kids are homeschooling, whether it's a kitchen table or a dining room table, or sometimes they may just be in the living room. They generally will spread throughout the house, and that's a good thing because sometimes they bicker. So sometimes they do need their space, and sometimes I need some space from them when I am trying to get something done as well. So it's good for them to have different locations that they're able to go to and work independently, but also have that space where they know when they're in that room, there's only one goal. So it definitely has helped, just being able to organize everything in one location. Our homeschool life is odd because I'd say that it's flexible yet structured. We really homeschool year round. I think a lot of homeschooling moms can relate to the belief that I have that every moment is a learning, teachable moment. So for us, we really don't take the summers off. We really just kind of have a flexible schedule, and that's important to me because we do like to vacation a lot. We do like to go on a lot of field trips. We do enjoy going to the park some days or going to visit family some days. When I say that I homeschool my kids during the summer, it's not that we will go Monday through Friday, from morning to the afternoon like we do during the school year. But what we do is we may wake up and focus on one subject or two during the summertime. So even during, other breaks, it is important for me to make sure that I am challenging them. And even though we may not sit down and do a worksheet or learn a new subject or focus on a lesson, we are doing something that is related to them learning. As I said, every moment is a teachable moment with kids. Try to challenge them really throughout the year. So we don't really have a set schedule as far as days that we will participate in schoolwork and days that we will not. I don't typically plan to take days off ahead of time unless it is around a major holiday. It's just kind of understood that around the holiday, around Christmas or birthdays, that we are going to have a break and we're not going to do as much work as we typically would do on a day that was just a regular day. Our family last year decided to give a nearby co-op a try. Unfortunately, that experience just did not work out for us. That particular co-op just didn't really meet the expectations of what we were looking for myself, my husband, or my children. It is something that I think kids could really benefit from. So if I am able to find a co-op that just works a little bit better for our family, then I would love to become a part of it. A typical day in our homeschool will start around 8:30 in the morning for my kids. Of course, I'm up before that on a good day. I'm up before that. I'm not quite an early riser, so my early, I'm sure, is not your early, but my children will usually wake up around 8:30, and if they're not awake by that time, then I will wake them up because they are all kind of like mommy in that they like to sleep in. And at that point, they know their first task of the day is chores. I believe in teaching children to be responsible and also to appreciate what they have been given in life. And one of the best ways for me to help them with practicing those healthy habits that will benefit them later on in life is by holding them accountable for it today. So every morning they know their first task is to wake up and clean their room. Usually by that point, hopefully I finish my morning routine. Some mornings are better than others, but usually I like to start out with reading my Bible, and then I'll go into working out. And then after that, I'll usually drop a load of laundry and try to do a few little chores if I don't have something that's immediate that needs to be done for my businesses. After completing their morning chores, they will come downstairs and I will usually have them participate in a group activity together. Sometimes, if they're a little sleepy or if I know we had a later night, then I will let them start out with reading. But most mornings we are starting with something that my oldest two can do together, which is typically a Spanish lesson, or they may start with Bible on certain days. I usually don't start with something like math or science just because my children take a little while to turn on. And if I were to start with something as intense that requires so much focus as those subjects or even history, then I would likely end up teaching that same lesson later on in the day or during the week. So to make it easier on all of us, I just kind of start with something that's a little bit more easier to take, that will wake their brain up and get them ready for the rest of their subjects for the day. What I have found works the best for me with teaching certain subjects like science and history is to teach the same material to my children, but just alter the amount of material that I'm including for each of them. So for my 11 and 8-year-old, I will have them work together on, let's say, a history lesson. Let's say we're learning about Black Wall Street. So they both will be responsible for learning that material, just the basis of what it is, when it occurred, who it involved. But I will, at some point, I will dismiss my younger child, my 8-year-old, so that she can work on an independent project. Usually it's a hands-on project that will just reinforce the lesson that I taught her. So it may be painting a picture of what she learned about Black Wall Street, or I may tell her to go look in her closet and pretend like she lived during the times of Black Wall Street and to come up with a short skit to describe to us what life was like. And at that point, I will work with my 11-year-old student because I hold him more accountable for being able to provide me with more detailed information about the lessons that I teach him. So I will just continue to teach him more facts about it. We'll get into an open dialogue and just have a discussion about any questions he may have, or just, critical thinking about what life may have been like during that time. Sometimes after that, I will have him also participate in hands-on learning activities because he enjoys it too. Even though he's 11, he still is extremely creative and likes to be able to use that side of his brain when he is learning as well. So I will have him complete some hands-on activity also. And no matter what they're doing separately, I make it a requirement several times throughout the day for them to do an oral presentation of what they have either created or what they have learned. Sometimes I will have them do this independently. Sometimes they will do it as a group. There have been times when I have called family members on FaceTime and I will let them present to their family members just so they can get used to speaking intelligently in front of others, and feel comfortable and confident with standing in what they know and sharing that information with others. Because my children are different ages, they do at times have different lessons that they're working on that I can't really teach both of them at the same time. Usually while I'm teaching this subject matter to one of my children, the other will be participating in an independent activity, whether it is watching a video on something that I'm getting ready to teach them just to introduce the concept. They may have silent reading at that time. They may work on a project. They may have free time. It just really depends on what they've already accomplished during the day and what they still have left to accomplish. So at the beginning of this video, I did mention that I have a 2.5-year-old. And we all know that toddlers can be very demanding, and mine is probably the most demanding of all toddlers. So usually throughout the day, she is there wanting to be close by, and that it has not proved to be too much of a problem. But I will, if I'm teaching something to my older students and I know that I cannot be distracted and I don't want them to be distracted by her, then I will put on a learning video for her, such as Daniel Tiger, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, Sesame Street. I mean, she's 2.5. She loves to sing, she loves to dance, and she loves all of those characters on television. So that has worked well for her. But she also loves learning also. So she likes ABC Mouse. She loves to do puzzles, flashcards, she loves, and then, just building blocks. I'll usually try to keep her learning toys close by so that I could just pull them out when I need them. And that usually keeps her pretty busy. Or sometimes I will just let her just come and sit right next to us. And as I'm teaching the material, I'll give her something to write with so that she feels like she's participating. And that will usually help for a while. When I first started homeschooling, I remember reading a blog that was written by someone. And in the blog, they said that during your homeschooling day, you should completely avoid any housework because during that time you are your child's teacher, and it's a distraction for you to do any kind of housework. And I tried my hardest to follow that because this person had been homeschooling forever. What I learned, however, was that that method did not work for me because my house became a mess and it was a disaster. So what works for me in my household is during those times when before my children wake up, I'm just rushing, trying to get done what I can get done before they wake up. And then once they are awake, whatever has not been done, I don't stress about it because I know that there will be times throughout the homeschooling day when I can get that done. It's more realistic for me while they are participating in a Spanish lesson for me to go and do the dishes or to make breakfast. As homeschooling moms, we know that we are the custodian, we're the principal, we're the school counselor, we're the teacher, we're special education, we are the resource officer, we're everything. And so throughout the day, I can't just take off those other hats and say, well, I'm only the teacher now. So it is necessary for me to do some household chores. And usually I'll try to fit that in during times when they are working on either a group project or they are both busy doing an independent project. So instead of just kind of hovering around them while they're working, I'll go and make myself useful when I'm not tending to my 2.5-year-old. For me, it's important for my children to not only learn the same things that their peers are learning and to make sure that I'm keeping them on target when compared to their peers, but I also want them to be those students that surpass what is the norm for their age group. I want them to think creatively and to always challenge themselves. And so my goal is really for my children to complete school as confident learners, as eager learners, to be world changers, and to always surpass the expectations that have been set for them by others and by themselves. They have their own learning styles and they're unique. And it is also very necessary for me to remind myself why I decided to start homeschooling in the first place. At times it can get so frustrating. As I mentioned, I have 2 exceptional learners, one of whom has an attention and focus problem. And sometimes it can get extremely frustrating for me when I've taught a lesson that they don't recall, or when I'm in the middle of teaching something and they are thinking about something that's going to occur later on during the day. At those moments when, honestly, sometimes I do have to walk out the room and take a break and then come back, but I have to remind myself or call my husband so he can remind me, or my mom, or somebody else that can step in and remind me of why I started homeschooling them in the first place. It was so I could teach them in the manner that they needed. And I came into this knowing that my children have different learning styles. And so when they give me that during the school day, I can't be surprised, and I have to accept that, and I have to continue to teach them from that place of knowing why I started this. I'm not a homeschooling mom that uses a lot of curriculums. What I will do during the summertime when our academic schedule is more relaxed is I will look at the standards that are required by the school system, not just in Georgia, but also neighboring states and the top performing states in our nation. And I will just take a look at what they are expecting for the students, because I want to ensure that not only will my children have learned the same information as their peers, but I want to make sure that they surpass those standards that have been set. And from there, I will develop just a very fluid and flexible schedule, yet structured, of what I plan to cover for the school year. So it's broken down by month, and within the month it is broken down by weeks. So every month I will generally focus on a different topic for our lessons. So for example, for the month of January, I will know that my focus will be geometry with my 8-year-old. So I have my topic for that month. And then what I do is break that very broad topic down even further into weeks. And then once I've broken it down into weeks 1 through 4, I will break it down even further into days. It definitely helps that I'm teaching my children the same basic material when it comes to different subjects, because the only difference that I have to make is just ensuring that I'm adding in that extra information for my oldest. I have in the past purchased curriculums and they work very well, but what I don't necessarily like about curriculums is sometimes the order that they teach materials, or that some of them have just been mainly worksheets. And I can find so many worksheets for free online or create my own worksheets. So I don't usually go for a lot of curriculums unless I can find them secondhand. In that case, yes, I will purchase a curriculum. I use so many different resources when teaching my children, and sometimes they're just random books that I find in the most random places. It may be just a workbook that I found at Sam's, because sometimes what I've learned about these workbooks that I think are undervalued in the homeschooling community is they teach the things that we sometimes forget to teach. So those worksheets will do those basic, everyday, very simple lessons that are so necessary for our kids to have, but because we're just doing really in-depth studies and really challenging material, sometimes we will forget to do those simpler lessons. So I love those workbooks, whether I find them at Ollie's or Sam's Club or online on Amazon. I love them. I do like to use a variety of books for science and for history instead of just using one curriculum, because one thing that I stress with my children is that you always have to check a number of sources. You can never just, especially when someone else has compiled information that they've gotten from other sources, you just want to double check it. So I will have them learn a lesson reading one of our textbooks or just a book that we have in a subject one day, and then the next day they will compare and contrast by reading another book. So I would say that is definitely something that I like about not using curriculums. Something I do not like about not using curriculums is I do have to do a lot of searching for materials. And sometimes that is, just me doing a quick Google search after we complete our lesson and printing off a worksheet, if I don't have time to find it beforehand. But, thankfully that has not failed me yet. There's so many great materials out there that I've been able to find what we need. I don't have a set budget annually for homeschooling materials, just because I am always on the hunt for great things to use in the classroom, whether it's arts and crafts supplies or books that we may find secondhand, curriculums we may find secondhand, or me printing worksheets. But I am a very frugal woman, and it is important for me to make sure that I'm spending responsibly when it comes to homeschooling material. I will typically first search in a thrift store when I'm looking for new books or curriculums for my children. As I mentioned, I don't typically purchase curriculums new just because of past experiences. but I will for sure buy one that I see in a secondhand store. But if I don't find what I'm looking for there, then I will certainly look to Amazon or look to other used books websites. I've also purchased some materials from the Georgia Cyber Academy website. Including everything, our total is just above $4,000 every year. But we try to really use a lot of the materials that we already have, or to buy a lot of materials secondhand. My biggest homeschooling challenge can sometimes be fitting everything into one day, and cutting the day off when we do not get to cover everything. That can sometimes be a struggle for us because we do get pretty detailed with some of the information, and before we know it, the day has passed, and so the next day we have to adjust it to make sure that we cover the materials that we didn't cover beforehand. And at the same time, I would say that that is the one thing that I would have appreciated knowing going in, was that you can cut your day off and you can reschedule as you need to, and you are the teacher and the principal and the everything of your school. So if you need to move something to another day, it's no big deal, and your kids are still learning. They spent all day learning, and that's why you didn't get to that other thing that you really wanted to get to. And guess what? The next day they're going to spend all day learning again. So I would say that that is my biggest challenge, but also something that I wish I would have known was okay, is that some days you won't get everything done, and you will have to push your curriculum around, and that's okay. I mean, now at this point, there have been times where I look at my spreadsheet that I've made and I realize, oh my goodness, we are still talking about the human body, and we were supposed to have moved on to astronomy, which actually happened last month. And you know what? It's not a big deal, because all learning is worth learning. And so even though my children weren't doing what was on my schedule, they were still learning. And the benefit of homeschooling is I can make that adjustment to make sure that they can also learn that additional material that I needed to teach them as well. I think one piece of advice I would love to give other homeschooling moms is, first of all, to hang in there. And second of all, to not compare yourself and your children to other homeschooling moms and their children. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's abilities are different. We all have our strengths. We all have our growing areas. And it's important just to remember what yours are and to use your strengths when teaching your children and organizing your life as a homeschooling mom, but also to work on those growing areas and make sure that they're not affecting your children negatively. But always remember that it is okay, that everyone's homeschool is going to look different, and that's the benefit of homeschooling. It's a beauty of homeschooling, really. It's why we decided to start homeschooling, was so we could do it our way. So make sure you do it your way. Don't try to do it my way or her way or his way or their way. Do it your way. Remember what your purpose was for starting this journey and stay true to it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Everybody, take care.